team bids you happy Tuesday morning. Very good morning to you. It's Tuesday today, Elvis, and we've got heavy subject matter this morning. Lots of news happening, but our discussion should be interesting.
It's all about religion, and religion in schools particularly. Even the Organization for Religious Education and Democracy, in short, God, have challenged the right of schools to use Christian practices.
Yes, indeed, it is. And of course, they talk about fairness and equality and all these sorts of things. We asked the question of you on our poll. We had a slow start on the poll today, guys. Should the dominance of Christianity in public schools come to an end? It's a question we asked. We've only had 14 votes in so far, so it's not really a fair look at what the kind of mood is. But the big majority saying, no, it shouldn't come to an end just yet. Come on, guys, go and vote there and show us what you are thinking. It'll be interesting to see how South Africa is thinking about this.
Now, Peter Mofokeng says, why abolish the very thing that's helped us build the societal morality? Asked Peter Mofokeng. Why should we abolish it? Shouldn't
we teach ethics and morality in school? We'll get there now. Freddie Whitehorn says, ask that to Muslim schools and see what you get. Says Freddie. Contrarian view. Interesting one. Lechasa tweets us. He says, no, shouldn't. Why should it be? Yes, but there are many different cultures and many different religions in our schools, Lechasa, and there should be tolerance for all of that. But Elvis, we go a little bit further and we ask a follow-up question to this because it's such a difficult thing to get your head around.
And because we have such a diverse society in our country, we're asking that question. Should morals and ethics rather replace religion in schools? Is that perhaps what we should do?
Yeah, morals and ethics, how we interact with each other. From a young age, should we be taught how to respect other people's cultures and upbringing and backgrounds, and maybe we won't have the divisions then that we do have. The analyst tweets us on the question of us.
He says, yes, morals do not come from religion. Every rational thinking intellectual person knows this.
Trevino Fritz, nice one, Trevino Fritz. Freddie Whitehorn comes in and back and he says, pursue the one and don't neglect the other, he says. Yes, tolerance also, Freddie. We should tolerate everyone's point of view.
This one coming from Pilani, he says, let's go back to Bantu education, which by far has produced the likes of Mandela, Aubrey Mashike, Thabo Mbeki, and others.
Pilani,
well,
Bantu education?
There.
Are you kidding me?
Well, there you have it. Those are some of your comments. Please keep them coming on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page, and we'll read them as we continue.
Interesting happening, or well, we're counting down to an interesting briefing in Parliament this morning. Of course, Lynn Brown, Minister Lynn Brown will
Minister of Enterprises, she'll be there.
Yep, and she'll be talking about one of the points, not the only one. One of the points will be, of course, the the reappointment?
Reappointment, reinstatement, leave.
The
maternity leave, perhaps?
I
don't know.
Anyhow, that's what's happening. We expect it to be somewhere, well, just after 9:30. Also, the Blitzbox just arrived. They've just touched down in Cape Town. We'll try and be there alive a little bit later to give you an update, as the Blitzbox, of course, have done South Africa so proud in recent times. Anyhow, let's get on with the news.
British Prime Minister Theresa May will hold a meeting of the country's top security committee this morning after 22 people were killed in an explosion after a concert in the English city of Manchester. Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown and the Eskom board will appear before Parliament's Public Enterprises Committee today to discuss the reinstatement of Brian Molefe as the CEO of the power utility Eskom. And the bail hearing of the Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotoso will continue in the Port Elizabeth Magistrates Court today. Those are the big news stories, but before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Gentlemen, good morning to you. A very big day in the world of sports. We got some sad news as well as some celebratory news. And I think I'm glad that you touched on the Blitzbox. We'll be trying to, like you said, get in there live and try and see live pictures of these world champions coming back home.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they got a good reception at Cape Town International. It would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they did a really nice media campaign, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be there. Yeah. We'll show a little bit of it as we show you the headlines for today's sports. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you today. MotoGP star and former world champion Nicky Hayden dies of severe brain damage 5 days after he was hit by a car while cycling in eastern Italy. Senegal beat Saudi Arabia at the 2017 FIFA Under-20 World Cup in South Korea to go top of the standings in Group F.
He was in there, and they might still be in there. They've gone 2 up.
The South African Sevens team, the Blitzbokke, arrived back in country today after being crowned world champions in London. Team that is South African, that is world champions. More about all of that a little later in the Sports Bulletin. For now, it's back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. British government's top security committee, Cobra, will meet shortly following an explosion at a pop concert in the city of Manchester, which killed 22 people and injured about 60 others. The American singer Ariana Grande had just finished her performance at the Manchester Arena when a huge blast near the foyer shook the building, rather. The Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, says that it is a barbaric attack which deliberately targeted young people.
The moment a suspected suicide bomb exploded in the northern English city of Manchester on Monday night. Inside, screaming and chaos as fans at an Ariana Grande concert run for safety. At least 19 people killed and 50 injured in the blast. U.S. officials say the attack fits a pattern by Islamic State of focusing on soft targets. British police are calling it a suspected terror attack.
We are working closely with National Counter-Terrorism Policing Network and UK intelligence partners. This is clearly a very concerning time for everyone. It is important also that people here in Manchester avoid the area around Manchester Arena so that emergency services can continue to effectively deal with the incident at that location.
Authorities also say they've destroyed a suspicious device found several hours after the blast. Monday night's explosion would be the deadliest militant attack in the UK since 52 people were killed by suicide bombers in London in 2005. The blast went off around 10:30 at the Manchester Arena, the largest of its kind in Europe. A large portion of the crowd were children. Ariana Grande says she's broken over the tragedy, tweeting, quote, "I'm so sorry. I don't have words." Other celebrities are also sending in their condolences. Katy Perry tweeting that she's praying for everyone at the show. And Demi Lovato writing, quote, "Tearing up, imagining innocent concert goers losing their lives." Britain is on its second highest alert level of severe, meaning authorities believe a militant attack is highly likely.
Coming back home, Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown and the board of Eskom will appear before Parliament's Public Enterprises Committee today to discuss the reinstatement of Brian Molefe as the CEO of the power utility. Now, this follows a public outcry calling for the decision to be reversed. Brown was summoned by the ANC to Luthuli House over the matter last week. Molefe resigned from the state electricity supply last year after he was named in the former public protector Advocate Thuli Madonsela's State of Capture report. Molefe was fingered for his role in awarding contracts to a Gupta-owned company to supply coal to Eskom. In a surprise move earlier this month, the Eskom board announced that he was returning to his old position. Opposition political parties have also raised objections and called for the decision to be reversed. The bail hearing of the Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotoso will continue in the Port Elizabeth Magistrates Court today. Now, during his previous appearance, an official from the Department of Home Affairs told the court that the pastor was in South Africa illegally. Omotoso is facing 22 charges, including human trafficking. He's alleged to have recruited and groomed young girls at his church for sex. During his previous court appearance, it was revealed by an immigration officer that Omotoso possessed a number of passports. The court also heard that a visa that was issued to the pastor in 2000 was fraudulent, making all of his visa applications null and void. The state is opposing bail on the grounds that Omotoso is a flight risk. Now that's your news for now. Now today we're asking you that very important question. It's all about religion on our poll, and we've got the poll up for you, and you can go on there on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, find us there and make your choice, yes or no. Should the dominance of Christianity in public schools come to an end? So far, 71% of you are saying no, 29% are saying yes. Well, there's an updated poll there, 26 votes now in. 70%, 77 rather, are saying it should not come to an end. That's the dominance of Christianity. 23% are in agreement. So let's start that conversation. It's over to you, Eben.
Yeah, Albus, I'm surprised our regulars are not really voting this morning. Keep voting, guys. So this is such an emotive topic, and my Facebook page is going crazy at the moment because it is such a sensitive topic that causes, well, such polarization. Anyhow, the battle over religion in schools now back in court. The Organization for Religious Education and Democracy, Oh God, is challenging 6 public schools over their Christian-only practices. The matter was heard in the South Gauteng High Court.
Ministers are joined only because they are involved in the outcome. So it's not that they are doing something wrong as such. The Minister of Basic Education has sent legal counsel to defend her right to make policies, for example, and we certainly have no opposition to that. In essence, the case is about the equitable representation of South Africa's religions in schools. What we have at the moment is that schools decide and elect to present a specific religion, and that is simply not tolerated by the Constitution. We're talking only about state schools as well, or public schools as it should rightly be called. So there are still private religious schools, and that's fine, the law allows for that. But the problem is that South African public schools are using state money, taxpayers' money, to promote a specific religion, and that is certainly against the Constitution. So the 3 basic elements are that of freedom of association, so everybody, regardless of his or her belief, should feel welcome in any public school. The second is the equitability. In other words, a school cannot, or the state as such, cannot give preference to a specific religion. And the third one is the right to privacy. So if you are pregnant or homosexual or whatever, you might choose to tell people that, but the state may not ask you, especially as a public school, can't ask you if you are a Christian or a Muslim, or if you are pregnant, or if you are homosexual, for example. So that is the right to privacy. And those 3 rights are being seriously undermined by public schools, by many, many public schools in South Africa.
So the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, or CASAC, is supporting the Minister of Basic Education and her right to have made the national religion policy. We support the policy, we feel that it is constitutional, and we argue for its constitutionality.
The Schools Act makes provision that STBs can actually determine the policy of the school. It could be a financial policy, it could be a religious policy. We've basically did our policy based on what we feel our parents actually want, and we're basically trying to implement it in that, from that perspective.
Civil organisations have justified their decision to challenge the right of schools in the Johannesburg High Court to use Christian practices. The Organisation for Religion, Education and Democracy is challenging this Christian-focused cultures of such schools, saying they violate the national policy on religion. The organisation says it is not against independent religious schools, but takes issue with public schools that are using government funds to actively promote evangelical or authoritarian Christianity. Now, joining us in our Cape Town studios, Hans Peterson, the chairperson of the Organisation for Religion, Education and Democracy. Hans, a very good morning to you, and thank you for being with us.
Good morning, Eben, and thank you for that brilliant introduction.
Hans, now we heard what you said in the clip. Just tell us quickly why you don't want Christianity to become the dominant religion in South Africa's schools.
To start off, I would like to say that religion is welcome in schools. We've never fought to remove religion or gods or Bibles from schools. That has never been our intention. Our intention has purely been for equitable treatment of South African religions in schools. And as you've said there, what we find is that state institutional infrastructure like schools and state money, taxpayer money, are used to promote a specific religion, and that is what we are against. The Constitution just simply don't allow for that. What I did appreciate from your introduction was that you highlighted the two different approaches to this, to the defense. The one would be the authoritarian, or I would like to have the cultural entrepreneurial defense of religion in schools, and the other one would be the evangelical arm of that. So these are two distinct efforts to promote Christianity, in this case specifically, in our public schools. Now, if I am a parent and my child is going to a school, I may wish that child to be brought up Christian, Muslim, Hindu, whatever, and it is not for the school to then decide on a specific approach that they would like to have a preference for. In other words, put pressure on the child either to conform, to fit in, or to, what's a nice word for going elsewhere. And that is very common. We find this so common among people from the schools as well and general lay public, that if you don't like a school, in other words, if Linden High would choose to be a Christian school and you don't like it there, you don't want your child to be in that school, then it's up to you to find another school. And that's not how government institutions are supposed to operate.
We elaborate a little bit further on the question with a follow-up question of our own, and we talk about morals and ethics, because morals and ethics ultimately are the principles that guides any good society. We want to know from you, should morals and ethics not replace religion in public schools?
It's not a question of replacing. There's no doubt that religions have played a huge part in establishing morals and ethics, but we also know that that is not the prerogative of religion, and there are plenty of examples in the world where some religions, including Christian, Muslim and others, have warped moral values, because what they then do is to instill this in-out group mentality that we are the best, everybody else is inferior. So morals and ethics are extremely important, and I think it does need to be in schools. But as the national religion policy states specifically, that they are not the prerogative, morals and ethics are not the prerogative of religion, and that good morals and ethics are to be found in many, many other ideologies, philosophies, etc. And one example would be Ethos, who's opposing us in this court case. They launched a program of installing morals and value systems in schools where they educate teachers and whoever is involved or interested to how to do that, how to instill morals and values in schools. And the morals and values they list, none of them have anything to do with religion. So there's no direct link between religion and morals and values. And our Constitution is one prime example of that. It lists there the human rights, the things that we hold dear, the things that the state would protect for the individual. Those are morals and values. And they are not based on religion. They do find echo in religion, of course. Many religions share the same values and morals, but they are not the sole proprietary of religion. So it's a red herring, really, to discuss whether we should have morals and religion, morals and values in school. Yes, we should have them. The only thing is you can't tie them to one specific sectarian religion.
Hans, I want to talk quickly about the school governing bodies. School governing bodies are almost a law unto themselves in South Africa. Have they become too potent and too powerful, and should those processes be reviewed?
I agree with you there. School governing bodies do play a very important role in schools, and they should do so more. There are schools where their efforts are lacking, and I think that should be corrected. So they are important. They reflect the wishes of the community. The huge mistake that is being made by the defendants in this court case, however, is that they think they are a law upon themselves, as you mentioned. The school governing body still has to operate within the ambit of the Constitution, the various laws, the School Act, the laws on school governing bodies specifically, and the national religion policy. So those set the parameters within which they are to operate. And the defense in this case simply wants them to have a blank slate. In other words, if the community majority
would like a school to be a Christian or whatever, then they feel it their prerogative to do so. And we have examples of that. Let me show you 2 examples.
Yeah.
Here's a school, and this is a typical authoritarian approach, which says that you can be a good school learner and get ahead in life,
Yeah.
but only considering God's influence. And then on the other side, the evangelical type, we have this, where on your school material, it is said, praise Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, if you are not of that ilk, and remember now, you may also be a Christian, just not of the reborn variety.
Yeah.
If you would like to opt out of that, you don't have the choice, because it's printed on your school yards. It's it's printed on everything that is being presented to you, and that's like dogs mark trees. You know,
Yeah.
we mark the school grounds in the name of Jesus or the name of God, and this is the de facto religion that we would like to promote among our children, among strangers' children. Remember, these children get sent there to be educated, to one day operate in a world with the proper education, but there's this hidden agenda of preparing them to also accept God in their hearts, so that, and this is mentioned in the communications, for example, of organizations such as Freedom of Religion South Africa, who mention that they consider schools as harvest fields for souls.
Yeah.
Now, that is not the prerogative. That is not what schools are there for. So, I state again, religions are welcome in schools. We want more religions in there represented. And the idea, as is explained in the national policy exactly, is the school does its job of educating children, and it makes its facilities available to the community, where outside organizations can come in and do their thing, be it religious, be it whatever. You have the voortrekkers, you may have CSV, etc., etc. Okay,
Hans, we're running out of time. I've got a last question for you. You talk about harvesting of souls, and that's one of the things that people are very concerned about. When you talk about the need to convert people to Christianity, should this practice be abolished completely, not just in schools, but even in a sort of wider context? Because these are the kinds of things that cause conflict, doesn't it?
It does cause conflict, but then society should treat that. There is a public area of discussion where these things should happen. So I'm not against people trying to convert. Whether you want to convert people to a political party or some other ideology or to some religion, that is fine. What is wrong, however, is to use the power balance of the teacher versus the child in school using state institution. That is completely wrong. So there it does not belong.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. Hans Petersen, he's the chairperson of the Organization for Religion, Education and Democracy. And children should be allowed to be children before you try to convert them to any religion. That is the view of Hans Petersen today. Of course, we've been running a poll and we're asking you, well, the big question of the day, should the dominance of Christianity in public schools, should it come to an end? That's what we're asking you. 31 votes in. Well, it's about 2/3 are saying, no, it shouldn't come to an end. And what do you think? Is there a direct correlation between morals and ethics? Now, our question of the day, of course, we've been asking you the question of the day as a follow-up question to this question, and we're asking you about morals and ethics, because that's what you guys are worried about, is that we'll have an immoral society if we don't have a religion in schools. Should morals and ethics replace religion in schools? That's our question of the day. Alex has tweeted us. He says, at school must morals and ethics, not religion, says Alex. Very firm. Lechasa says, let everyone be accommodated. Yes, Lechasa, that's what the discussion is about. School should not be a place where religion should harvest souls. That was the view of Hans Petersen, and I think it's a view that many people in South Africa hold. Of course, others believe that, yes, morally we have an obligation to bring our children up in the right way. Let's take a look now at what's trending on social media. Of course, the big story today, the hashtag is Brian Molefe, who along with Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown and the board of Eskom, they are set to appear before Parliament's Public Enterprises Committee to discuss the reinstatement of Molefe as the CEO at the power utility. Now, this follows a public disapproval and concern about his reappointment without process, some call it. Then, moving to one of the others, the big story in England internationally, hashtag Manchester. There was chaos shortly after the end of an Ariana Grande concert, as it's believed bombs went off near the entrance there. It's confirmed now 22 people are dead and more than 50 are injured. Some say even more than 60. Now, the singer posted a tweet apologizing, as this was meant to be one of the happiest and most memorable evenings for all the children and teenagers who attended. Parents are still waiting to hear from their children or police, as many remain missing this morning. We stay in England, where the Chelsea Flower Show brightened up the city with their annual festival yesterday. Fauna and flora enthusiasts would have bloomed with joy as plants were turned into creative animal sculptures. That's the hashtag there, Chelsea Flower Show 2017. Some incredible horticulture, I think is the right word in this case. Then, speaking of an African theme, people are also talking about Beyonce's Africa-themed baby shower with the hashtag Beyonce. Wow, but we also need to inform you of the attack at a hospital in Thailand's main city in Bangkok. More than 20 people are believed to be injured in this attack. This is the hashtag to look out for, Thailand attack. Now let's take a look at our picture of the day. This one from Reuters, and it's captioned, "Suicide bomber suspected after at least 19." Well, the number has moved on to 22 now, killed in an Ariana Grande UK concert blast. Of course, taking place in Manchester last night. A comment of the day. Well, this one comes from La Bella Vita, who says, "They targeted an Ariana Grande concert knowing her audience consists of children and young people. That is so vile," she says. Now, let's take a quick look at what's happening in the courts here today. Of course, there are quite a few cases of interest in Port Elizabeth. Shortly, the bail hearing of Nigerian pastor Timothy Omotoso is expected to continue in the Magistrates Court, Port Elizabeth, that is. Of course, he faces 22 charges, including human trafficking, after it's alleged that he recruited and groomed young girls at his church for sex. Then, in Cape Town, the High Court is expected to hear the testimony of a forensic expert in the trial of murder-accused Henry Van Bedra this morning. Of course, Van Bedra is facing 3 charges of murder, 1 of attempted murder, and another of obstructing the administration of justice. He's pleaded not guilty to all of these charges. It's a story that has gripped the attention here in South Africa. We're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, we're going to have the alternative view about having Christianity in South Africa's public schools. Don't miss it.
We make sure to be where news is happening,
both locally and globally. For the latest business news, stay with us.
From South Africa to the world, we've got all your latest sporting news.
Don't miss our weather updates every hour.
Stay tuned to News Today, Monday to Friday, from 3 to 5:30 p.m. here on SABC News.
Die Organisasie vir Godsdienste, Onderrig en Demokrasie, OGOD, or which loosely translates to the Organization for Religious Education and Democracy, says that it wants to promote in-depth, fact-based education about religions of the world. They want to eradicate religious indoctrination in public schools. They want to expose religious counter-knowledge and magical thinking. They want to do away with religious elitism. And they want to expose the psychological dangers of religious damnation and to ultimately promote a democratic, secular, and human rights-based South African society. Well, you heard the chairperson a little bit earlier. On the other hand, the Federation of South African Schools, they argue that schools have the right to choose which ethos to follow and that they do not force the practices onto pupils. For more on this, we're joined by the CEO of the Federation of Governing Bodies of South Africa, South African Schools, Mr. Paul Colditz. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Morning, Alice. Thank you.
First and foremostly, you heard the introduction.
Yes.
You heard the chairman of Oh God. What is your reaction to this court case?
Well, what he says on television does not really reflect what's in their papers. In their papers, they're asking for quite a lot of prohibitory orders, prohibitory interdicts against these schools for certain things that happen at the school. For example, prayer before matches, children kneeling and praying before or after matches, prohibition of books written by Christian authors, etc., etc., etc. So it goes much wider than what he has said in his interview with regard to wanting religion in schools.
To be practiced in all schools, or a secular religion, so to speak. But I'm going to come back to that because it's very important that we understand where you are coming from as the Federation of Governing Bodies of South Africa, your role, and how do you facilitate and engage with these very difficult topics that we are talking about?
We work from the Constitution. Section 15 of the Constitution guarantees the right to freedom of religion, belief, opinion, etc. That means that you have the right to believe or not to believe, and you have the right to express that belief and manifest that belief. And where we're different from what happens in America you have a wall of separation between state and religion. You're not allowed to practice religion, to manifest your religion in public spaces. In South Africa, you have that right. There's no difference between exercising and manifesting that right in private and in public. And then you have subsection 2 of the Constitution, which specifically makes provision for the fact that religious observances may be conducted at state and state-aided, state-funded institutions such as public schools, provided that they follow rules made by the appropriate authority. And in terms of the South African Schools Act, that appropriate authority is the is the school governing body, subject then to equitability and attendance being free and voluntary. That means that if and we're saying that means that a particular school community, as represented in its governing body, can determine the ethos of that school, but without discriminating, without victimization, without indoctrination of learners in that particular.
So it is in consultation with the community that lives in the school, but is it in consultation with all parents?
Yes, preferably, if it's possible. The process of consultation with parents must be held before the governing body would make such a decision, and that is what we encourage, because we have different communities in South Africa with different value systems, with beliefs, with different part of that particular school.
Now, another accusation that was leveled against you and the governing bodies of schools is that you are law unto yourself. What do you say to that?
That's absolute nonsense. All policies, all rules that are determined by school governing bodies are always subject to the supreme law of the country, which is the Constitution. And then furthermore, the in the Schools Act.
Is it too much what they are asking? Freedom of association, equality, the right to privacy, as well as they are saying that the schools are using public funds in order to promote Christianity.
Well, that is what the Constitution allows. The Constitution allows religious observances at state-aided, state-funded institutions such as public schools. The Constitution specifically allows that in contrast to what happens in America. That's the first point. The second point, which is very important, is you use the word equality. It's equitability. We recognize the fact that within schools you'll have different groupings, you'll have different believers, non-believers, etc., etc. But that does not take away, first of all, the right of the school community in its mission statement as determined by the school governing body to determine a particular ethos for the school. Then secondly, and that again I emphasize the fact that that must be without discrimination, without victimization of those who do not subscribe, and the Schools Act specifically allows for that, that people may not associate themselves with the ethos or the mission statement of the school. And then within this diverse group of children that you may have in the school, you must treat them equitably.
Yes.
Equality is going to be almost impossible.
Just briefly, if the court rule in their favor, what would it mean and the impact that it will have on all schools, public schools in South Africa?
Our problem is that what they're trying to do is to impose their particular view of what schools should look like on schools. Let's go back to your question. Your question is something to the effect of the dominance of Christianity should not be disturbed or whatever. Let's go
should
back.
There rather be morals and ethics than religion?
I'll get to that just now. Pre-1994, we had a particular brand of Christianity enforced on all schools in the country. Now, the Constitution has removed that. That was Christian national education. What this organization wants to do is to impose secularism on all schools. That is just replacing Christian national education with a particular world and life view. And we say, leave it to the community to decide in that particular community. And once the community has decided, then equitability, free and voluntariness must follow from that.
Your expectation from this case? Win or lose?
Well, we had a good hearing, let me just say that. And I'm confident that it's going our way, but I'm not allowed to prejudge the matter.
Mr. Colditz, thank you so much for your time and
you
joining
very
us
much,
here
Elvis.
in studio.
Thank
Now
you.
that was Paul Colditz. He's the CEO of the Federation of Governing Bodies of South African Schools, talking to us about schools that have the right to choose with which ethos that they want to follow and that they do not really want to force practices onto pupils. What do you make of all of that? That's why we're asking you this question on our poll. Do you think that should dominance or the dominance of Christianity in public schools come to an end? That's the question we pose to you thus far. 45 votes, a bit slow today, but you're getting there. 64% of you are saying no. It should not end the dominance of Christianity. 36% saying yes. Ruben Malchaz says, South Africa is predominantly Christian. Why should we drop that to please those constituting less than 10%? There's only 10% of the country that is not Christian. Sipum Tempo says, I think it must stop because it doesn't help at all, especially in these days or years until people realize what is Christianity. There's one come from Dipanso that says, adults and their political agendas. Now the kids have to be involved in all of this. This one from Barry Martins. For firstly, if you believe in God, then you're a Christian. But if you don't believe in God, then you are an antichrist. That's all, says Barry Martin. That's where he leaves it. Ruben Malcha says, wouldn't even be an issue in a predominantly Islam state, let alone a Muslim school. One should exist alongside the other. Now, there's a very sober view from Ruben Malchaz. Mr. Maluleke says, religion has become too divisive and intolerant, even within single religions. Note multiple opposed dominations. Now, these are some of your comments coming through. Keep them coming, and we'll read them as we continue. Now, remember that in a short while, we'll be going to Parliament to take a look at that briefing with Lynn Brown. We'll find out shortly if it is happening. In the meantime, let's take a look at the Facebook page today. And if we go there, we can see that the ANC Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says that government will soon give a way forward on the reappointment of Brian Molefe as Eskom CEO. We are waiting for that briefing this morning, which we waited with bated breath to see what's going to come out of that one. Meanwhile, the Nigerian army is also embroiled in yet another human rights predicament after allegations that officers stripped naked scores of women protesting for the independence of a volatile region. And finally, Donald Trump received a warm welcome from Arab leaders who set aside his campaign rhetoric and focus on his desire to crack down on Iran's influence on the region. Now, you can find all of these stories on our Facebook page and our SABC News website. Well, let's leave it for now. Let's go over to Eben to find out what's happening with the newspapers around the globe. Eben?
Yeah, of course. We've seen some bomb blasts all around the world, Elvis. It seems as if it's a rather sad day in England, especially Manchester. 22 young people are dead there now, and elsewhere we've seen the same. But let's go to New York, start there first. The New York Times reports that Donald Trump's budget proposal will call for more military spending and a $2.6 billion for border security, including $1.6 billion to build the Mexican wall. The Wall Street Journal there says, of course, it's confirmed now that 22 Wall Street Journal, 22 people confirmed dead and 59 injured by a suspected suicide bomber at a concert hall in Manchester, England. Finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that US President Donald Trump stood alone in a rare moment of solitude before the Western Wall yesterday, and that's the front page there on the Jerusalem Post. Back home, the big story today, Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown and the Board of Eskom, well, they are appearing before Parliament's Public Enterprises Committee right now to discuss the reinstatement of Brian Molefe as the CEO of the power utility. Of course, this follows a public outcry calling for the decision to be reversed. Let's go there live.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, members of my department. Oh, good morning, DM. Officials, members of the media, South Africans, good morning. Let me start by saying that I've submitted my affidavit to court with regard to the Brian Molefe matter. Oh, sorry. Can you just take the hot coffee away? Sorry, there's just so many things on my thing now. Let me start by reporting that I've submitted my affidavit to court with regard to the Brian Molefe matter. I've instructed my legal team to withdraw my opposition to Part A of the relief sought, that I set aside my appointment of Mr. Molefe. I've nonetheless deposed an affidavit, as I believe the information I have will assist the court in determining its decision. My initial advice was to oppose Part A on the basis that I neither appointed nor reinstated Mr. Molefe, as well as on the basis of advice from Eskom's board that it had obtained an opinion from a senior counsel advocate on its handling of the matter. But having had the opportunity to properly appraise the issues, I have decided that I will abide by the court's decision on the legality of Mr. Molefe's return to Eskom. When Eskom's board approached me to inform me of its decision to bring Mr. Molefe back, I said I would support it on the proviso that it was legal. I also made this point repeatedly when addressing the media on this matter, though curiously, none of them thought it worthy of reporting. With regard to Part B of the motion, which seeks to stop Mr. Molefe from conducting any work at Eskom, I have reserved my rights. So there are two parts to this. One of the issues that the court will have to decide is a technical one relating to Eskom's memoranda of incorporation. Eskom is governed by various pieces of legislation, including the Eskom Conversion Act of Act 13 of 2001, Section 6.2 of the Act requires me from time to time to publish memoranda and articles of association. Two different memoranda of incorporation are relevant to Mr. Molefi's situation. One passed and adopted before his arrival at Eskom, and one passed during his tenure. Material differences between the two documents included that the 2014 version, and I was appointed in May 2014, did not require the minister to be noted as a party to the employment agreement of the group chief executive, noting, though, that the minister was required in the 2016 version to be noted in as a person to be noted. Oh, Minister's not very articulate this morning. The executive employment contract concluded by Mr. Molefi and Dr. Ngubane in March 2016 was concluded in terms of the 2014 agreement. It didn't have to be shown to me at that time. When Mr. Molefi quit Eskom in November 2016, I was under the impression that he had resigned. In fact, on 11th of November that year, I wished him well and was sorry to hear that he has resigned. I was not aware that he had applied for early retirement. This I only learned in April 2017 after reading in the media that Mr. Molefi was receiving a 30 million rand payout from Eskom and asking Eskom's board to make a more prudent deal. Again, on Eskom's legal argument that Mr. Molefi was appointed under the terms of the 2014 MOI, the early retirement agreement didn't have to be shown to me. So on the 11th of May 2017, after taking advice from senior counsel, the Eskom board reverted to me with 4 options on the proposed 30 million rand payout to Mr. Molefi. As a courtesy, the board indicated to me its preference was for the consensual rescission of Mr. Molefi's early retirement, and that it was willing to accept Mr. Molefi back as group chief executive. I said I would support the board's decision, providing it was legal. As I told the media then, I believe that Eskom would obtain more value from having Mr. Molefi at work than simply paying out a 30 million rand. Colleagues, I didn't expect that society would universally welcome news of Mr. Molefi's return to Eskom following the allegations leveled against him in the Public Protector's State of Capture report. But nor did I anticipate the level of vitriol. I expected that his achievements as a technocrat, the fact that he would be under enormous scrutiny, and the presumption of innocence until proven guilty would bring some balance to the debate. But there is a presumption of guilt. Despite the Public Protector's report being taken on review, as a society, as politicians, as media, we must beware of criminalization by association, particularly in the absence of anyone having been convicted of a crime. There is almost a climate of hostility presently surrounding our state-owned companies that incidentally belies their actual performance. It is an environment complicated by strident voices ahead of the ruling party's policy and elective conferences later this year, and by members of the opposition who view the State of Capture report as their tickets to Nirvana. I'm not telling you this to try and make you feel sympathetic towards Brian Molefi, Dr. Ngubane, or Eskom, but because I feel it's the truth. Dr. Ngubane is here. He will be able to answer whatever operational and technical questions you might have. I also see that Dr. Pat is here, and I see that Mr. Khoza is here. They are board members. Dr. Pat Naidu, sorry, I couldn't remember your surname. Let me say in your and Dr. Ngubane's presence that I have noted concerns that have been raised about the board's performance to the extent that some have called for its dissolution. I don't think it would be fair to jump to any conclusions while this matter is before the court. I have, however, because Eskom has an AGM at the beginning of July, end of June 2017, I've already started a process where they have an external evaluator, which happens annually, because boards are appointed for 3 years and then they can be rotated annually, depending on their performance. And if I have, however, taken that legal advice on the process to follow, if it's appropriate, while a discussion is underway in government at the moment as well. Madam Chairperson, our giant state-owned companies, including Eskom, are critical levers of the developmental transformative state. Where they are, we must fix them. But we must be very careful we don't allow our discourse to break them. Later this week, when Deputy Minister Martins and I present the department's budget vote, we will provide a progress report on the state-owned company's reform project and development of shareholder policy. Suffice to say now that the project will directly address some of the governance issues we are here to discuss today, including the appointment of chief executive officers and the creation of remuneration and pension standards. I thank you for the time you've given me. I will try my best to answer the questions you may have, and Dr. Ben Ngubane will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the presentation that you gave us. I just want to if there is anyone that wants to add something from what the Minister has said, or do we take questions right from what she has just said? Anyone from the department, the Eskom, no one. So I will take the questions from the members of parliament that are here.
Can I propose that the chairperson of Eskom board speaks? Yes. Yeah. Then the chairperson of Eskom board speaks, and then we can then, so that you can then ask questions of the delegates. Yeah. Yeah.
That is why, Honorable Shivambo, I asked, is there anyone that wants to say something? And nobody responded. But if the meeting or the members of parliament feels that the chairperson of the board has to say something, the chairperson of the board, I am giving over to you to say something or to speak, adding or subtracting from what the minister has said. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everyone. Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, honorable members of Parliament, our Minister and shareholder, Mr. Brown, and the Deputy Minister, Mr. Martins, DG, and board members of Eskom, ladies and gentlemen. I think the Minister has said almost everything pertaining to the processes that occurred, resulting in the present situation. I was with Council yesterday, and they told me that they've filed the affidavit that I signed, and that this matter cannot be debated anywhere else other than in a court of law. This was the Council opinion. So in all fairness, I have to listen to counsel because they're representing us in court. And they will be raising the arguments and answering allegations. So my hands are tight in terms of how far I can go. But the processes that the minister outlined are exactly what happened.
Point of order. Thank you very much, House Chairperson, Chairperson of the committee. Just to point out that we've received legal advice in terms of Parliament's own procedures around the sub judice rule, and unfortunately it's not going to today be the convenient shield that's expected to be to shield Eskom and the Chairperson of the Board from answering their responsibility in terms of the Constitution to account to this body and to this Parliament. It is your duty, sir, to account and give a full account to this body. Irrespective of what's going on in the court, the sub judice rule since the MIDI television case is regarded as archaic and not applicable. You are accountable, sir, to us as members of Parliament, elected to hold you accountable and the Minister accountable. And I would submit, Madam Chairperson, that the sub judice rule does not apply and should not be used as an excuse to not give a full and proper account to this body and the people of South Africa for the shenanigans at Eskom.
Thank you very much, Honourable Senator. The legal opinion from Parliament has been circulated. I think the members should look at it if you want to say something. Honourable Rieke.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. My chair is to maybe get closer to what the latter speaker has said as it relates to the subject nature of this exercise. But let me put it categorically clear, Chair, that in the same legal advice that we received as the committee, on top of what the honourable member has said, the honourable Senator, it goes further to say as long as the exercise is not going to get deeper into the demerits of the case, we have a right or we have a responsibility to hold the executive and the board individually and collectively. So we can't suspend our role as a committee to get information about this, but say to indicate that we don't either want to get into the case, into the merits of this of the case. Thank you.
That's fine, Chair. The chairperson doesn't want to speak, so it's fine, but we're going to ask questions to the minister. So on the...
Honourable Trump, it's not the questions yet. I thought you were going to speak on what is on the legal...
Yeah, I think that is solved. Like,
no, there's another hand.
Okay, that's fine, yeah. I don't think that there's any contention around that, yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, Chairperson, I think my colleagues are quite right. We received an opinion from the Chief Legal Advisor to Parliament, and as much as the Ministry and the Board has the benefit of legal advisors, I think it would be appropriate for us as a committee that represents Parliament also to have our legal advisors present in this meeting. Because if they are not here, it's not going to take them long to get here. So that if we are steering off course, or we are being advised that we are steering off course, then we could get the considered advice of Parliament's legal advisors. But having said that, Chairperson, the Minister has given us a report. But personally, I'm nowhere nearer knowing what happened. Nowhere nearer knowing what happened. And I would like that she provides us with the document she referred to. We don't have the benefit of that affidavit that she submitted to court, and I believe it's public information. And, we can then refer to a document that you've referred to, which will assist the process. But for now, I think we should proceed, and if the chairperson of the board does not want to make any remarks, I mean, we will still continue to ask questions. Thank you, Chair.
I think we should continue asking questions, but I see the hand of the Deputy Minister is up. Maybe he wants to say something. Deputy Minister.
Chair, I think the most propitious thing to do under the present circumstances is to take cognizance of what the Minister has said, and in his rejoinder, the chairperson also said that he concurs with the articulation of events that she presented to the House. So in order to move forward, the Portfolio Committee is within its right to ask questions in regard to what the Minister has articulated here this morning. And by taking questions on her contribution, it will shed light where the chairperson of Eskom wants to provide the committee with the requisite information. It would be proper that he does provide the information so that we see how far we can go. And in doing so, where affidavits have been put forth, they would have to articulate the nature of those affidavits, and then the Portfolio Committee would have an understanding.
Thank you very much, DM. I am giving over to the committee to ask questions. Honorable Mazonia, Honorable Riende, Honorable Ngubele, it's Mazombe, it's Riende, it's Ngubele, it's Chivambo, it's Steneze. Sorry, I will not say honorable now, I'll say honorable when I come to them. Say me.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, Minister Brown. Deputy Minister. Minister Brown, last week when we heard of the reappointment of Mr. Molefe, we also heard that you've been summoned back to Luthuli House by the ANC for a discussion on this issue. I wonder if you'd share with this committee by whom you were summoned and why, and as a result of that meeting, where you currently stand, and is that why you are withdrawing your opposition to Section A of the DA's court papers? Chairperson, the Democratic Alliance has consistently asked for the employment contract of Mr. Brian Molefe, both his former contract as well as his contract now, to be made public, and I'd like the Minister to make a public declaration that she will allow us to see that document. Chair, I must say that this whole situation has gone from the sublime to the ridiculous. And I think for the Minister and Dr. Ngubane to expect the South African public to just sit back and accept what's been brought before us today is simply unacceptable. And it really is a slap in the face of good governance. And I use that term good governance because that is exactly what Mr. Molefe said his reason for resigning was. And I have in front of me Mr. Molefe's resignation document. I also have an internal memorandum which was sent to Eskom, to 48,000 Eskom employees, from the head of HR, informing them that Mr. Molefe had in fact resigned. And I also have WhatsApp correspondence where some of the power station managers even aired their discontent with the fact that Mr. Molefe had resigned, and he answers them by saying, "My decision is final." So I find it very confusing, as I think do all South Africans, to now have to accept and to read that 1 minute it was a retrenchment, 1 minute it was an early retirement, now it was a resignation. It's now known as the Triple R. And I think that it's unacceptable that we as members of Parliament are treated in such a fashion that we're expected to believe this kind of thing. And I think we now run the risk of the name Molefe going from a noun to a verb. And I think we're going to be telling our children to stop telling Molefes, because certainly we cannot be expected to believe anything that's in front of us now, because it can't be. Chair, I find it very difficult to believe that Minister Brown, as the stakeholder and as the chief overseer of Eskom, would not have known that Mr. Molefe applied for early retirement. I think that there has to be some kind of relationship between Minister Brown and Minister Ngubane, Dr. Ngubane rather, and I fail to understand and fail to believe that Minister Brown did not know that Mr. Molefe took early retirement, if that's in fact what he did. I believe her when she says that she understood that he resigned, because the entire country understood that he resigned. And that's why he was sworn in as a Member of Parliament. Certainly you cannot be sworn in as a Member of Parliament if you're still a CEO and simply on unpaid leave. These things do not make sense, and as South Africans we have every right to be furious that we find ourselves in this situation. Chair, 30 million rand, that is a lot of money to be paid out to anyone. In fact, Minister, I'd go so far as to say it's an obscene amount of money. 7.7 million rand a year salary is an obscene salary to be paid. Can the Minister tell us how much of this 30 million rand has been paid to Mr. Molefe? And will the Minister provide the documents detailing the payments of this 30 million rand, how it was brought about, how it was calculated? Because we have certainly dealt with actuaries who have done their own assessment of how much should have been paid, and given the 18 months employment at Eskom, even taking into account Minister Molefe, that's a Freudian slip, Mr. Molefe's previous, you were supposed to be the Minister, yeah. Given Mr. Molefe's previous employment, it should have been around 2.8 million. So I'd love to know where the 30 million amount comes. And then, Chair, I'd like the Minister to be perfectly frank and honest with the South African public. Do you think it's right and fair for a South African, a fellow South African, someone who's supposedly someone we should look up to according to you, who has a good track record according to Minister Brown, to in fact hold the entire country to ransom for 30 million rand? Because if we are to believe the Minister's story, it is her assumption and her understanding of the matter that it was better to re-employ Mr. Molefe than to pay out a 30 million rand, which is what the board decided on. So in my mind, that means the South African is holding the entire nation to ransom for a sum of 30 million rand. And I'm confused and I'm surprised that Minister Brown would allow herself to be bullied into that kind of situation and find herself in such a compromising situation. Chair, I think it's self-evident. The left tongue doesn't know what the right tongue is lying about. Someone is telling a fib, Minister. And it's up to you today to clear your name in this committee. And you have to tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Because you have now signed a court document. You are now appearing in front of Parliament, in front of a parliamentary committee, and you are obliged to tell us the truth. And anything that is not the truth coming from you will hold you ethically liable in Parliament and criminally liable in court. So, Minister, come clean with us. Tell us who's lying. This is your opportunity, and we expect, Minister, for you today to tell us what the real situation is. Because as it carries on now, we're a laughing stock. People are rightly laughing at us, and it simply cannot go on as such. Minister Brown, lastly, and perhaps Dr. Ngubane would like to answer this. I have in front of me the advert that Eskom released for the position of CEO. If in fact Minister Molefe was on unpaid leave and was CEO all the time, why was this position advertised? And I also have people who have been interviewed for the job, who have spoken to me, told me about their interviews, and are willing to file affidavits to say they were interviewed for the position of CEO. So why, if Mr. Molefe, according to Dr. Ngubane, was simply on leave, why was this position advertised, and why did you take interviews?
Thank you very much. Just a correction. It's not Minister Molefe, it's Mr. Molefe.
I realize the error, and I'm very grateful that it's not Minister, believe me.
Honorable Yang.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, once more.
Okay.
Chairperson, I think we have arrived now at a time when what South Africans have been waiting for since the news of the return of Mr. Brown Molefe to the organization, that is Eskom. I want to pose a question first to the Honorable Minister, Chairperson, the Minister as the leader of the shareholder of Eskom, and also recognizing the experience and expertise that exist in the individual, that is Mr. Molefe. On receipt of the news that Mr. Molefe was contemplating to leave or was to leave the organization, what did the minister did in order to ensure that the investment of Eskom in the expertise of Mr. Molefe are sustained or maintained in the organization? I'm referring to the time when he was to resign and join Parliament. And secondly, Chair, the early retirement issue of Mr. Molefe, when did the minister get the information as it pertains to the application for early retirement on part of Mr. Molefe? And in receipt of that, what did the minister do in collaboration maybe with the chairperson of the board? Because I firmly believe that the board has a responsibility to conduct oversight over Eskom and is a governance structure. It can't be correct for the board to say, today I receive the letter of either stepping down, retirement, early retirement, or resignation, and then you regard that as a normal issue, especially when an accounting officer is actually taking that course. What is it that the board did, in particular the chairperson, in collaboration with the minister, the political head of the department? And secondly, Honorable Minister, on the promotion of sound administration in the organization, do you think what has happened in Eskom for such a senior individual and an important warm body in that organization is today going to Parliament, then the following day is coming back, and all of a sudden you declare, Honorable Minister, that you were not aware of the application as it pertains to Mr. Molefe? The state-owned enterprises, Honorable Chairperson, salaries has been a thorn in the flesh of all of us. And now we are in this quagmire. And we must not be surprised when one is living wrongly or rightfully, and then there is a huge of money that must be paid. And when we were quoting this as members of Parliament to say there must be a certain consideration or review of this, are we correct to have warm bodies that are earning triple what the president is earning? So it was regarded as, if no, it is normal. These state-owned enterprises are different bodies that are governed out of the public finance management. Now we are in this quagmire. What then is the view of the minister to generally look into this aspect? Because an incident of this nature is new to my own knowledge. But if the Honorable Minister and the board have actually experienced this, how did they apply their minds in resolving such an aspect which is actually now in the courts as the board, whose responsibility individually and collectively need to make sure that whatever action, conduct and behavior of the accounting officer is also their responsibility as well. And we can't now behave as if one thing has gone wrong here. All has gone wrong. The organization, Eskom, is in tatters like now, and the credibility is at stake, and the work of the board has been tarnished, and the integrity of the board members individually and collectively is now challenged. How do we then, Honorable Minister, deal with this issue in a manner that is fair and square? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kungubel.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think a set of questions have been asked, which is going to create a stronger platform for further engagement. Because I think, Minister, and both yourself and the chair of the board, we know how essential is the credibility of Eskom. How essential does General Government contribute to that credibility? How economically it affects the country as we speak, your current general status and so on. And we know that there is a question mark around bribe. That question mark has not been cleared. It's a matter of fact. We work on the belief that you decide, chair of the board, to work on the belief that that question mark might go. But the question mark exists. It is no excuse to say there is an application by the president for review. That doesn't change the question mark. Because as we speak now, the public protector has got a view on bribe. What the president is doing is applying to court for review of a view. And that view creates a question mark that has not been cleared. My curiosity is what pressurized you for such a strategic institution to hire somebody on whose head there's a question mark that has not been cleared. What pressurized you to do that? What forces you to do that? You've been a chair of boards, you've been a leader in government, you've got a track record. I guess the governance principles must be flowing in your system. How do you hire somebody to lead an institution with this question mark that has not been cleared? What is your attitude to the credibility of this country as affected by the decision you've taken? Now, I agree with the statement that says the basis of employment of Brian Molefe is something that must be presented. It must be exposed, it must be understood, because it is on that basis that you are arguing on your correctness to rehire. And that decision is a public question, is in the public interest. And based on that, the information around that is necessary. Even actually putting in place for everybody to see the memorandum of incorporation. I'm also curious, Minister, around the statement you are making that says you had an impression that Brian had resigned. I would strongly request that the Minister clarifies how does it happen when that political office is an oversight office. When such a strategic person leaves, how do we deal with such a person on an impression? There's also this statement that says an agreement between the board and Brian 30 million. The question I would want to pose, was a due diligence done to check the legality of that agreement? And can we be presented with that agreement of the 30 million? And I think we must also be clarified to what extent the powers of the Minister of Oversight irrelevant when the board acts apparently illegally. But I think a lot of questions have been asked. I'm curious to hear how the answers are going to be with regard to that.
Thank you, Honorable Shivambo. I've got a list of honorable members. I have listed your names here, so I am following the list. My apologies if there is something that is making you to want to ask now, but I've got a list that I'm following. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it's important that perhaps before we make substantial remarks, we point to the fact that the powers, privileges, and immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislators Act says that there are offences that relate to witnesses, to people who are called here to Parliament to account on certain issues. And Section 17(2)(e) of that Act says that a person, whether or not during examination under Section 15, willfully furnishes a house or committee with information or makes a statement before it which is false or misleading, commits an offense and is liable to a fine or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 2 years or to both the fine and imprisonment. I think that we must clarify that if people are going to come here and lie to us and give us misleading information, we're going to report them to the police and they must be arrested. And if the police do not do that, we're going to take it on court until there's been action, because there's been a character of lawlessness that has been happening. People undermine Parliament, and that must come to an end. I can tell you it's going to come to an end moving forward. Let's just take the Minister through what has happened thus far. On the 14th of October, the Public Protector released the State of Capture report. And then on the 11th of November, Brian Molefe resigned, citing the State of Capture report as the reasons why he's resigning as a Chief Executive Officer of Eskom. And he did not say that he's going to subject the State of Capture report for judicial review. On the 11th of November, the Minister accepted the resignation of Brian Molefe and says that the Public Enterprise Minister Lynn Brown notes resignation of Brian Molefe. That was the heading. And the Eskom board did not say anything about that. Did not say that, oh, Minister, you have issued a statement about the resignation of Brian Molefe. He actually did not resign. They never said that anything about that. And then on the 30th of November, the Minister approved the acting CEO, Matsela Kuku, and then again reaffirmed that this is due to the resignation, that is your own words, of Brian Molefe. Again, the board did not clarify that Brian Molefe has not resigned, he has retired. And then in the beginning of around March, the board of Eskom advertised for the position of Chief Executive Officer of Eskom with the closing date of the 20th of March 2017. And the reason why the board of Eskom advertised for the chief executive position is because there was a vacancy in that office. And that vacancy was created by Brian Molefe, who had resigned and was sworn in as a member of Parliament. And the member of Parliament, when you're sworn in, it says in Section 47 that a member of Parliament can be any person who is eligible to vote for the Assembly, but that person must not be in the employ of the state or state organs. So I think that it's clear that it's beyond any reasonable doubt that Brian Molefe had resigned. So no one must try to mislead the Parliament here. It's a criminal offense in terms of that act that we quoted here. So no one must try to mislead Parliament. And Brian Molefe is not appealing the state of capture report. The president is. And the president is appealing the remedial action and not the findings. He's appealing the things that relate to him. There are findings in the state of capture report that the proximity between the Guptas and Brian Molefe were uncomfortable for the deals that later on related to Tegeta getting money from Eskom. 44 calls made between Atul Gupta and Brian Molefe and Ajay Gupta and all sorts of Guptas making calls in between themselves and a CE of a state-owned company which later on grants the family substantial contracts, lucrative contracts that pays billions of rands. That is not under judicial review. In any way, even if the president were to go to judicial review, we can't go there and say that I dispute that there were phone calls between Brian Molefe and Atul Gupta. How does he know? He's not appealing that. And in terms of the Paja Act, I think that you're running out of time. I don't think that there's any time for you to could even appeal that is Eskom or Brian Molefe. So there's no, you must not take us for a ride. At least respect Parliament. If you wanted to employ Brian Molefe, why didn't you advise him to apply for the job when the rest of the people applied? I know Matsela Kuku applied for the job. He said he went to interviews. I spoke to him that there were interviews conducted for the appointment of Eskom CEO. Why? Because there was a vacancy that had been created by a resignation of Brian Molefe, who has been a member of Parliament and could therefore not be in the employ of the state. So I think that we must stop the games, Chairperson of the House, and not listen to what I think is a nonsensical explanation by the Minister. It must be rejected outrightly. And we must give a directive that the Eskom board should be subjected to an inquiry to check if it's suitable to continue as a board of Eskom. I don't think that they're exercising their fiduciary responsibilities in a responsible way, particularly that they've appointed a person who is not reviewing the fact that he had a compromising relationship with the family that ultimately got contracts from Eskom. And then they appoint that person to continue as a chief executive of the of Eskom, of the state company. So that only is adequate to take action against the board. I think that we must subject it to an inquiry, a thorough inquiry that is going to expose not only the issue of the appointment, but some of the issues that have been identified in the state of capture report, which they've not appealed, which Brian Molefe has not appealed, so that we can reach a determination in terms of what should happen. We must not be taken for granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Shivambo. I think that must get to the recommendation. It's Honorable Steenhuisen before you, Honorable Tsedi.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Thank you to the Minister for her input this morning. Chairperson, I smell a rat. And let me tell you why I smell a rat. Because when you look at somebody's behavior, and then suddenly that behavior jumps into an outlier position, it should be a warning sign for all of us. Now, I know Minister Brown to be a good minister. I know her to be a minister who's always been upfront and honest in her dealings and her duties. And I know her to have exercised only the best fiduciary duty over those entities for which she has had control. And so I found her behavior in this instance a complete outlier to the Minister Lynn Brown that I've witnessed and worked with over the last 3 or 4 years. And that makes me very suspicious. Makes me very suspicious indeed. Let's, as the Honourable Shivambo said, dispense with the nonsense. Brian Molefe was not on maternity leave. He was not on resignation. Not on long leave. he had not temporarily taken leave, unpaid leave, Brian Molefe had resigned from Eskom. Even if Brian Molefe had not furnished you, Minister, and others with a resignation letter, even if he had not made the public pronouncements that he had resigned, when Brian Molefe raised his right hand in the Speaker's parlour in the building across the road and swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa as a Member of Parliament, he tacitly resigned from Eskom. Because the Constitution is very clear at Section 47. It says that every citizen who is qualified to vote for the National Assembly is eligible to be a member of the Assembly except A, anyone who is appointed by or is in the service of the state and receives remuneration for that appointment or service. Mr. Molefe, therefore, is either, I would suggest to you that he tacitly resigned, even if he hadn't furnished you and the board with a formal resignation letter by being sworn in and accepting that oath of office, or he has perjured himself by swearing a solemn oath before a presiding officer of the Republic of South Africa to uphold the very Constitution, which he then would have known at the back of his mind he was betraying, because he would be in breach of Section 47. So either way, on either version, Mr. Molefe is shown to not be an honourable man. Either way. So let's just dispense with that nonsense. Mr. Molefe had resigned from Eskom. That is why Eskom went ahead and advertised the position and started procedures to fill it. So let's all just be at Edom on that. Stop this ridiculous public discourse about where he was and what he was doing. We know where he was. I would say to you, Minister, as well, that it's in fact, it's not the public disclosure that's destroying Eskom. It is the weekly bleeding and exposure of the wrongdoing that's been going on in Eskom under this board's nose, either with their knowledge or without their knowledge, which we're seeing dragged out every week in the newspapers and on Sunday television programs, where very serious questions have been asked of Mr. Koko and other members relating to coal contracts, which appear to have been steered towards Gupta-owned mines, to advances that Mr. Koko denied were given, and then when they were pushed under his nose, under his own signature, then, couldn't explain it. We're seeing now this in and out of Mr. Brian Molefe. It's not the public disclosure that's destroying Eskom. It's the behavior of those people within Eskom who fall under your charge and duty, Madam Minister, who are destroying Eskom. And I find it very interesting you'll use the word that the opposition see this as a nirvana. Now, if you know what the meaning of the word nirvana, it means blown out. And you're right, I'm seeing Eskom being blown out in front of our eyes. And I don't see enough fiduciary responsibility, I don't see enough commitment from your side, Minister, and from the board side to reverse this trend. What I do see is the outlier behavior continuing. Why on earth, and you say Mr. Molefe has not been found guilty by the Public Protector's report. Well, he hasn't cleared his name yet either. We still have no explanation about the calls between him and Atul Gupta. He hasn't explained it. We've got no explanation about the clear steering of business towards Gupta-owned companies. No explanation whatsoever. We don't even know where the Saxonville Shebeen is at this stage. He has not come clean and cleared his name as he said he wanted to do. We are no wiser today about those facts and his involvement therein than we were when the allegations were made and the report first came out. So I think, given those circumstances, the board has itself behaved recklessly by appointing him as the CEO again, given the fact that he still faces these huge allegations and clouds. Why on earth would you appoint somebody to head a board of a parastatal who, on your own version of offences, lied to Parliament and perjured himself by taking an oath of office which he knew was not truthful? Why would you appoint somebody with these huge allegations hanging over their heads, where on your own version there have been inconclusive findings on it, and he certainly has not been cleared? And so the reverse also applies, Minister. And I believe that in this instance the board have behaved recklessly and have not, at the best interests of state money and the taxpayers of South Africa, and not done their fiduciary duty to the level that it should be done. And so, Madam, Madam Minister, I would say to you, because it's such outlier behavior, the question I want to ask you, because it's just not the Minister Lynn Brown I know, did President Jacob Zuma have a conversation with you and instruct you to reinstate Mr. Molefe at Eskom? Did you discuss this matter at any stage with the President? And what was his instruction to you, if any, in relation to Mr. Molefe? Chairperson, I'd also like to make some recommendations around a full parliamentary inquiry, because I think that Eskom needs the same treatment that the SABC has got. It's been a very, very good process for the SABC. I think they're back on track now and starting to see the green shoots of recovery there. I think that this board needs the same TCP treatment from Parliament to start disinfecting it and getting it back on track.
Thank you, Honorable Tsedi.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. I'll need to be clarified on some few issues here. And some of the issues that are going to be raising will need the chairperson of the board to come in at some stage. And I want to disregard what you said earlier, because the fact that we had to convene this extraordinary session of the portfolio committee suggests that we are dealing with a matter which is of public interest. So I'm disregarding what you said earlier with regard to that rule on the basis of our understanding of the rule. Maybe let me start with that one. Two meetings, Chairperson, that I want you to clarify of the board. One meeting that took place sometime last year. At the time, Mr. Molefe was to leave Eskom. At that particular moment, what is it that you accepted in that particular meeting? Resignation, early retirement, or whatever. So it would be important for us to be clarified at this particular stage. What is it that you were accepting? Surely you were accepting something in your records. What is it that you accepted from Brian Molefe at that particular stage? The second one relates to the meeting that you had of rescinding a decision that led to the reinstatement of Mr. Brian Molefe. And I will need clarity on that particular issues. Surely there are some issues that you have agreed upon in that particular meeting. Even the record says there are some monies that need to be paid back. Can you clarify us on that particular aspect? And I want to go back to what Honorable Gungubele indicated in relation to the presentation by the Minister, because he needed to be clarified on your impression, which says you were under the impression that he has resigned or he has taken early retirement or whatever. And I want to take it further. From where we are, what would you say are the areas that were not properly processed by the board in relation to this very crucial matter? And I want to ask a direct question linked to this one. On the basis of the explanation that we are going to be getting, of course, having consulted your legal section, whether we have a winnable case. On the basis of the explanation that you will give us, it will be very difficult for us not to be convinced that if we end up losing this particular case, you will have to convince us why we can't take the route which says whoever has pursued this particular matter must then be responsible for the cost. So I'm saying a direct question, Honorable Minister. Can you tell this portfolio committee, do we have a winnable case to pursue this particular matter? The second last one, Chairperson, from the affidavits that have been filed, there is an indication which says Mr. Brian Molefe was on paid leave while he was an MP. Maybe this one also relates to what the board will have to clarify. Him having been on unpaid leave while he was an MP. Can you clarify this particular aspect so that as we live here, we know exactly what we are dealing with? As I've indicated, we have got a responsibility as the portfolio committee to conduct oversight over the board. I've disregarded what you said earlier. It will be important for us to be clarified on these particular aspects. Hence, we have convened this session so that as we live here, we know what is it that we can tell South Africans about this issue that has brought us here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Sedi. Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. I'm not going to repeat any of the questions that were asked, save to emphasize some of them, because I think we need answers now. We need more answers than questions. But having said that, Chairperson, I'm glad that you've requested the parliamentary legal advisors to be here. I understand that they have arrived because that will help us as we move forward. But Chairperson, I want to start off by saying that, this whole issue goes beyond a matter of a court case, beyond Mr. Molefe, beyond Eskom, but it's at the heart of it is good governance. And whether or not we want good governance in our country. That's what it is all about. But in saying that, there are so many, Minister, I said through you, Chair, I said earlier on, I'm in no way clearer with the report of the Minister than I was before I got here. Because there are so many unanswered questions, simple questions. Did Mr. Molefe resign? Was he on unpaid leave? Who accepted his resignation? Is the HR person that accepted his resignation here? Why did you advertise for a CEO if he had already resigned? Those questions have been asked. And another investigation we need, Honourable Chairperson, did Mr. Molefe commit perjury when he lifted his hand and was sworn in as a Member of Parliament? And was his political party implicit in this? Were they aware that he had not resigned from Eskom and he was receiving some benefit from another state organ? So these are things that we need to investigate. But having said that, Honourable Chairperson, through you, the Honourable Minister in the beginning said, and we heard her on previous statements that she's issued, that, Mr. Molefe is innocent until proven guilty. And we accept that as a norm in our society in South Africa. Person is innocent until proven guilty. But the point is there is no process to test whether Mr. Molefe was involved in any shenanigans while he was at Eskom. The state of capture report, as Honourable Shivambu mentioned, did indicate that there was prima facie evidence of wrongdoings between Oakbay, Tegeta. And this also goes to the heart of people who are using SOEs as a cash cow and as their personal ATMs. They can just go and withdraw money from SOEs whenever they want to. This is what's happening in our country. And taxpayers are losing out in the process. The President still has not presented a case before the Public Protector on whether or not he's contesting, and in what way he's contesting, the recommendations of the State Capture Report. In a pointed question to the Honourable President in Parliament during question time, I indicated to him that there was prima facie evidence of wrongdoings within Eskom. Will he not appoint a commission of inquiry to investigate what happened in Eskom alone? His answer was no. Subsequently, the Honourable Minister, with whom I have a long relationship as well, and Minister, you need to tell us, Minister, it's your credibility on the stake. through you, Chair. Is there any influence from anybody else in this matter that's clouding your judgment? I know you too long. We worked as MECs together. I know you too long for you not to make the kind of quote-unquote mistakes that you are making now. So come clean with South Africa. I think your credibility is at stake. The Honourable Minister has rightly called for a committee of inquiry in a press statement. The media know about it. Again, last week in Parliament, she said to me, well, you know, I've asked for this committee of inquiry. It's not for me to appoint it. And you're right. A judicial committee of inquiry is appointed by the President. But Minister, you have the oversight responsibility through your chair to appoint any kind of inquiry into a state-owned enterprise for which you are responsible. We are now going to take over that responsibility as a committee, because Honourable Steenhuisen was not in our committee last week when we decided as a committee collectively that if we do not get an ad hoc committee of inquiry, we'll use Rule 167, which empowers us as a committee to call anybody, summon anybody before us and have a week-long, 2-week-long inquiry into what is happening at Eskom, including what has happened with Mr. Brian Molefe. And all we need is resources from Parliament, adequate resources, both financial and human. And we're going to do that, Honourable Chair, because you agreed, we all agreed that we are going to do that. So, Honourable Chair, through you, Honourable Minister, please, tell South Africa what is going wrong here. Are you being unduly influenced by anybody to make these kinds of statements that you've made? Resigned, unpaid leave, did not resign, 30 million, etc., etc. And I think it'll help you, it'll help all of us if we can get those answers. I'm very glad, lastly, finally, Honourable Chairperson, that the former Minister of Finance is here with us in this meeting. As a member of this committee, I think we were told that he is a member of this committee, and I think maybe you didn't see him sitting in the corner to have welcomed him, because we welcome all new members to this committee. He will be aware of the spats between Treasury and some of the state-owned enterprises, and where there was reluctance to provide answers. So this goes beyond Mr. Molefe and things like that. Good governance is at the heart. We want answers, Honourable Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Singh. Before I call Honourable Mabanda, let me do the formal thing in welcoming Honourable Gungubele in the committee and Honourable Gordon as our new members in the committee. Then this committee is full of males, but we will look at that. We will look at that. Honourable Mabanda.
Very good.
Thank you, Chair. I think as members, we agree on the questions raised regarding Mr. Molefe. And my chair is on him. The statement Mr. Molefe wrote or presented on the 11th of November 2016. In his statement, he repeatedly said he's stepping down in the interest of good corporate governance. And then he said he's going to take steps into finding out, clearing his name. Now I want to ask the minister if Mr. Molefe's return, according to her, is it part of good governance? Him returning, is he now cleared and all that? Question number 2 is with the department and Eskom, that who is reporting to who? Is the minister reporting to Eskom or Eskom reporting to the minister? If the minister can find out serious issues on the media, like the 30 million in April, was Eskom not supposed to have
inform the minister or call the meeting or whatever, inform the minister of the things that were happening. Why is she only finding out when they are giving Mr. Molefe 30 million and she comes in to stop the 30 million and later they reinstate Mr. Molefe? Number 3, this unpaid leave. I think here somebody is, some other time I said I don't believe what somebody was representing, and they said I said people are lying. So I'm going to try not to repeat that word, but somewhere, somehow, Chair, somebody is not giving us the correct versions of events. If you are on unpaid leave, then you are still a member or an employee of Eskom. If you are on early retirement, it means you are no longer working there. You have retired, you are leaving the premises and everything. If you are resigning, you are given part of your pensions because you are working there. They give you part of your pensions and you go home either to start work somewhere else or to just stay at home and enjoy your packages. But with Mr. Molefe, today we are stepping down. After an hour, we are resigning. We are early retirement, unpaid leave, maternity leave. I hear there's a maternity leave now. There's, what's that other one where he stepped down, he retrenched. All of these terms, I think somebody is playing with our minds. So if the department and Eskom can be honest with us and tell us the truth, because the only way we are going to get Eskom right is if we are honest, if we tell the truth, if we tell the people the truth. That is all that they want. I don't think all this noise that is going around, it's on anything but the truth. If we are saying he stepped down, let it be that he stepped down, and clarify us on this stepping down and resignation. If somebody steps down, what does that mean according to Eskom? Because from my understanding, if you step down, you are resigning. So you must just go home. And Mr. Molefe had written a statement where he stepped down. The minister accepts the statement as Mr. Molefe is resigning, as resignation. So what is actually happening here? And my last question, Minister, would it not have been proper not to accept Mr. Molefe's reinstatement, seeing that there are all these misunderstandings of whether he resigned or whatever? I think it was correct that you stopped the 30 million payout to him. But at the end of the day, he was reinstated. Was it not proper to say, because of that 30 million, there's now that thing of the 30 million, you stopped it, it is good. Now he's being reappointed and he was a member of parliament. He left here on a Thursday after a sitting. On Monday, his Papa action coming back to work. So somewhere there, shouldn't the minister have said, as a shareholder, wouldn't it have been proper for you to say, no, we are not going to accept this man until we have cleared everything or done things in a proper manner? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nobanda. We'll now give to Honorable Gordon. Honorable Gordon.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the opportunity to make a maiden speech, so to speak. As several members have pointed out, the questions are aplenty, the answers are all over the show, they lack credibility, both in the public domain and from what I'm hearing here as well. So let me also apologize for being late. I think context matters here, Chairperson. And the context is firstly, I don't know whether the board lives in its own oblivion, but the public is connecting the dots, members of the board. Increasingly, the public is aware of what you as the board of Eskom are doing and not doing. They are increasingly aware that you are abusing state property and state resources in the name of yourselves, not in the name of the South African public. That you are part of, either wittingly or unwittingly, in some cases I think there's enough evidence to say wittingly, a conspiracy to capture Eskom for the purposes of the benefit of a few. That's the reality. Let's not play around with sort of technical questions. That's the reality. And worse still, what the South African public is worried about is that we're reaching a stage in managing governance in South Africa where there are a significant number of people in the bureaucracy and elsewhere, and the boards, who actually are taking a view which says, I don't care. I don't care if you know what I do. I don't care if you know that public resources are going elsewhere. I don't care how many reports the public protector or anybody else provides, because I'm protected. The question is by whom and at what cost, and how will history record your role ultimately in this regard? Because this is the critical institution in the South African economy, as we learned in the period 2010 and thereabouts. That when Eskom doesn't work, it has a massive impact on economic growth, it has a massive impact on job creation in South Africa, it has a massive impact on enterprises in South Africa, and today I don't think we've recovered from that yet, notwithstanding the fancy footwork that we've been doing. And I don't want to talk about the exchanges. So the first point I'm making, Chairperson, is context matters. That this is not just one isolated incident of hiring and firing and retiring and not retiring and maternity leave or otherwise. This is part of a pattern. Last week, the South African Council of Churches produced its preliminary report, which helps us to begin to connect the dots and understand what is actually happening in this context. And what we need to know from the board is, are they still going to do what we used to do as activists before the security police? The minister and the deputy minister will know that, I think. You know, we used to keep a straight face, notwithstanding how many days we were in solitary confinement, and notwithstanding whatever pressure we were put under to answer questions about our affiliation to banned organizations or not. That's what I see. Straight faces. Because we believe that, you know, whatever we pout out in the public domain, nobody's going to be able to challenge in any significant way. And sometimes we do it with extreme arrogance as well. It's remarkable. Whereas we're supposed to be serving a public institution. The second point is worth repeating. In much of the literature of my party and its policy documents, and I'm sure many others share that as well, institutions like the state-owned entities are a crucial part of the developmental state. They are a crucial part of assisting the developmental process. But here we are busy at all sorts of levels, parceling out state assets, state resources, state procurement to a handful of beneficiaries. And again, if we think we're bluffing the public, we've got a thing coming. And that's why, Chairperson, what we do as a parliamentary committee can either give us credibility as Parliament in this process, or we will also be accused of being co-conspirators, inverted commas, in this process. So how we approach this question is going to be absolutely critical, as far as I'm concerned. If we go back to Mr. Molefe, I mean, at some stage, perhaps when some of the colleagues have been talking about inquiries, if and when those inquiries take place, we need to go back to his role and the CFO's role in Transnet and some of the transactions that are now coming under public purview and examination. not a subject for debate today, but if you want to connect the dots, connect all the dots, and ask ourselves the question, who did what where, and in service of what cause at the end of the day. So that's the point I want to leave with you, Chair, and perhaps you can guide us on how we take this matter forward. As many colleagues have pointed out, and I don't want to repeat, from the time of hire to the time, for example, when the board met and said, no, we need to let this fellow go, or this gentleman go, to the point where the board said we need to hire them again, I think the legal advisors from Parliament can only do their job well if they have all the documents available to them. So we want all the board minutes, certified by the chairperson of the board as the truthful representation of what happened at the board. If need be, we want to have the tapes of the minutes of the meetings of the board, so that the legal advisors can have a look at that to see and verify whether the written minute is fairly representative of what the spoken word was. Let's have transparency. Let's have transparency. We all say we are accountable, we open, we're accessible. Well, let's open the books. Let's open the books so that the South African public can actually say everything is on the table now, and we can actually do what is necessary. I think we need to ask you more directly as the board, who instructed you to rehire Mr. Molefe? Who made what phone call to whom? Or which meeting took place where with whom? As a result of which Mr. Molefe was rehired. I don't think we're going to get a truthful answer, by the way. But the question needs to be asked, nonetheless. Chair, if you would allow, I mean, this is a very privileged interaction that we have today, certainly in my experience. It'd be nice, because I've seen some of the board members on television. It'd be nice to hear from each of them what kind of interactions do they have with Oak Bay in their individual capacity, not as a board. Because as Mr. Shivambu was pointing out earlier on in terms of the Powers and Privileges Act, let's hear the truth. Let's hear the truth about what is really going on here. The legal advisors also need to tell us, Chair, as some have been saying, whether the board has indeed been acting recklessly and has been forsaking its fiduciary responsibility, let alone its developmental responsibility to South Africa. To the Minister, was there a legal opinion obtained which said what you can do and what you can't do, what you should agree with, what you shouldn't agree with, either by yourself, by the department, or by the board? Because ultimately this is a labor relations issue. And we can all speculate about who retired when or didn't. And many questions have been asked that I don't want to go into. But secondly, why did you not litigate on the matter? 30 million rands, I know, compared to 30 billion rands is a drop in the ocean, because nowadays you don't steal 1 million, not even 100 million, you steal 1 billion at a time. Yeah. You see? 100 million is not enough in the public domain. So it's 1 billion at a time. So 30 million rands nonetheless is a substantial amount of money. Why haven't we litigated on this matter? Why did we just give in to somebody's demand as far as this is concerned? I've requested, Chair, if you agree, the various board minutes and so on, and if need be, in an affidavit form. In conclusion, I want to support the idea. Well, the Minister perhaps might also want to tell us, you see, whilst a judicial commission of inquiry in terms of the Constitution is the prerogative of the President, hiring a retired judge to look into a particular matter, anybody can do, any minister can do. So why can't we have a retired judge or a senior counsel who is respected by all parties concerned to come in, look at all the facts, do the necessary in order to establish what really went on here and what are the facts. Secondly, we still have the option, perhaps we should debate that in the committee on our own, of the full parliamentary inquiry. But this must be backed, thirdly, Chairperson, by a thorough forensic audit. We want a thorough forensic audit about how decisions are made in Eskom. Eskom is far too important an entity for it to become a personal toy of a few individuals. It's a massive entity. We don't want to go into what it's holding as state guarantees and so on at this point in time. I would think respectfully that we might be arriving at a stage where either the board in its entirety should be dismissed or they should voluntarily resign. They have actually let South Africa down, more often than not. And with great respect, I know Dr. Ngubane, for example, for a long time. But I don't think that the board has served South Africa well. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Boran. I just, somebody will
take a 5-minute comfort break. Yeah?
All right, we will take a 5-minute comfort break so that everybody will.
Hi, Minister. Are you now a permanent committee member of this committee? Are you a permanent member or are you just dropping in?
Well, I'm not.
The only way to pour the perfect beer, this professional barman would tell you, is into a glass tilted at exactly 45 degrees. Oh, bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you again. Well, we'd say the perfect way to pour a beer is at this angle. Straight into your mouth. Tops its bar. Good beer, good advice, no Ponzi beer stuff.
When cell phones get cut off, people say Mdluli was listening. Who are you?
We have to approach Dennis Breitenbach, who was the prosecutor by then.
The DA parliamentary?
That's correct. The one who was making halabaloo about me.
There are allegations here that you abused the slush fund. What do you say to that?
We don't have slush fund. I don't know about slush fund.
I respect the fact that you cannot talk a lot about the Secret Service and all that. I guess that's the norm internationally.
Yeah.
But how do we know that you, Richard Mdluli, are not abusing the funds of the state? You are counted amongst the president's men. Are you?
That is rubbish.
Also the matter of General Boysen in KZN. He's not speaking very well of you.
No, that one is talking rubbish.
You are perceived to be very powerful, General, and you know, people who don't agree with you seem to pay the price. What is happening with the Parliamentary case?
No, I'm surprised because as I've said, I'm a person of people.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
What is environmental health?
In Section 24 of the Constitution, the environmental right has a second part, which is
to encourage people to be active citizens and gives us the right to participate in politics and organize and raise awareness so that the environmental right can be guaranteed.
Using coal and wood and paraffin to cook with or to heat their space or to heat water. These are basic fundamentals, and I think if we can address that alone, we will make a huge impact, an environmental impact on the health of our population.
Food that comes into the country, the vigilance at the ports and harbours is being checked at the moment currently by environmental practitioners who are port officers at those ports. They need to be more stringent in terms of control of what comes into the country.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
The winter season is upon us, and people tend to use all manner of appliances to keep warm. Now, this season usually comes with accidents such as shack fires that are caused by primus stoves, umbrellas, fallen candles, or people not curbing those open fires from spreading. So the question is then, what should people do to keep warm and safe at the same time? Are there specific stoves, perhaps, that you can buy that can reduce the accidents during winter season? Now, to find out more, we are joined by the Johannesburg Emergency Services spokesperson, Robert Malawutsi. Mr. Malawutsi, a very good morning to you, sir.
Morning and morning to the viewers.
So the big question is, what should people do to keep warm and safe at the same time?
Yeah, we have been, receiving a cold snap in the last weekend. So people will be tempted to use all, various items to try and warm themselves. So we advise them to use, make sure that as they use the heaters, candles, paraffin stoves, they need to make sure that they monitor them. They don't leave them unattended, so that we can avoid fire incidents, because we know when we have, a cold snap like the one we had over the weekend, we normally have a higher number of fire incidents, especially in our informal settlements.
Just talking about the weekend, just give us some feedback as to what happened over the weekend, because I know that you guys were on standby.
Yeah, we're happy about the weekend because over the weekend we just had one incident in Alexander where a organic market where about 4 shacks were destroyed by the fire, and there were no fatalities which were reported, of which we're happy about that our communities are starting to adhere to our calls of making sure that they look after this, heating and lighting appliances. So there were no other major incidents which were reported. We're just hoping that our communities will continue to make sure that they exercise all safety precautions.
Especially as we go further into winter now.
Yes.
But looking at shack fires specifically, what are some of the causes of those shack fires that you've identified?
Yeah, most of the shack fires are caused by paraffin stoves. Most of these paraffin stoves which are not regulated. Most of our communities buy, the stoves which are not regulated. We have got a regulator, which is the national regulator for compulsory specifications, who normally regulate the safe use of paraffin stoves and paraffin heaters, which most of our community use. So most of the stoves which our communities find accessible to them, are mostly cheaper stoves which are more dangerous. Most of these stoves, when you use it once, it explodes while you are using it. So
and those are the type of stoves that you receive from outside the borders, like China, for instance, cheap
exactly.
mates that come
Exactly. So now what we do is we encourage our communities to buy paraffin stoves in more reputable dealers, hardware stores, and these stoves they will see that these stoves will have the national regulator and compulsory specification sticker, and also SABC approved.
Yes.
And it's got also the homologation number there, which states that the stove is safer. What are some of the features on it which can be able to assist to reduce the fire incidents? When you're busy cooking, if accidentally the stove fell and then it actually cuts off the power on it. So those are some of the things. And also unsafe use of candles. Most of the people use candles, a beer bottle or a cold drink bottle, let's say, candle holder.
Yeah.
So we have come up with safe ways of using candles, of which one can use an old peanut butter mayonnaise bottle. You just clean it up and you fill it, half of it with sand. So you'll cut your candle into half. So that candle must be inside the jar. Then you can light on your candle. So you'll see that candle will be much more brighter than when you're using, like, for instance, a beer bottle or a cold drink bottle.
Yes.
So those are two most common causes of fire incidents. And of course, there are in other areas where people are still using, are doing illegal connections. We still respond to incidents where, the fire is caused by illegal connections.
Now, every year, Mr. Malawutsi, we see these shack fires, and of course they spread, and it takes out an entire community sometimes. What are you doing as the emergency service to prevent something like that? Are these some of the sort of initiatives and activities that you put in place to make sure that people are safe?
Yeah, firstly, when, for instance, new informal settlements, people are starting to settle in a specific area. From our side, we try and advise them to make sure that they leave, a distance, a safer distance for us to be able to move around with our equipment, firefighting equipment, and also our stretchers if somebody's sick. So since most of them, they cannot really maybe understand, the distance, we just advise them to stretch their hands when they are building these shacks so that they will have at least between 5 and 6 meters distance of where we can be able to move around when there's an emergency. So, and also it also assists us when there's a fire. There won't be a immediate fire spread because there will be a distance in between the shacks. So those are some of the things we do when our proactive initiatives, our community, when we conduct our door-to-door campaigns, we try and advise our communities to leave that safe distance.
Now, I just want to go back to the primer stoves, which is very important because people use them. Are you looking after these communities in order to provide them with these stoves that sort of dies when they fall down, or what are you doing?
Yes, we're spending some money, even though we don't have enough money to buy for everyone.
Yes.
But we are focusing on mostly the areas which we know that we have a large number of fire incidents. So, sorry, we've got a project, we call it the Josie Safety Kit, which we will introduce to our communities. It's a bucket, a 25-liter bucket, which contains a stove, a parasafe stove, which you spoke about earlier on. It's got a solar lantern light inside there, which is also addressing the issues of unsafe use of candle. It's got a smoke detector and also a first aid kit, so that our communities can be able to, manage some of these incidences before we arrive as professionals. So the bucket, they will use it to extinguish the fire. For instance, if there's every time inside the shack, they will store that bucket with water. It must be full all the time with water, so they can use that bucket. They can form up a chain. If there's a fire next door, they can be able to extinguish that fire before we arrive. Because you'll understand that in most of the informal settlements, there's also challenges in terms of water supply. Yeah, so they can be able to use that to extinguish the fire. And then also the smoke detector, it also works as an early warning system, which can be able to warn people who are inside the shack to evacuate as quickly as possible.
The Josie Safety Kit, is it available for sale or is it just for you to give away?
No, it's not available for sale. What we have done is we just conducted a study in our informal settlements, and then we identified most of the issues, the problems which we have, which are most of the...
Robert Malawutsi chatting to us last week sometime, giving you some tips on what to look out for with open fires and primer stoves. Let's go back now to the Parliamentary Committee. Well, Lynn Brown is busy.
And everybody else that has come to listen to the committee, and also who is holding an answer to everything that has been asked here. Minister, are you saying to this committee, if the chairperson of the board, I know that Public Enterprises is a shareholder in a department, the department is a shareholder of all the entities that is under the department. It is not working like the other departments other departments according to the shareholder compact. I just want to check with you, Honorable Minister. If the chairperson of Eskom board signs a document within the entity, are you saying to us, as per the policies of Eskom, you as a minister, the Eskom board is not forced or is not forced to give you that document. They can sign a document without you knowing it. And then when now you will hear it from maybe from the media or from somebody else. Is that what you are saying in this meeting? And could you please quote for us a legal document that states that? Clear, so that we are clear on what on the issues. Or when you do not have a right to object, if you object, you must object under certain issues or under certain circumstances. Brian Molefe was a CEO in Eskom. I take it the runnings, the operations of Eskom, Brian Molefe was the main man on the operations of Eskom. Then if the main man leaves the job, so Minister, when you'll just say, okay, he has left, and then you take weeks to know that actually it's the CEO that has resigned or it's the CEO that has stepped down. It's only now, only when the board again does something, you respond in saying, and then what is happening? Because I take it, if the CEO of a company resigns, and the oversight body should be the first people to know that that person, especially a person who is in a position like the position Brian Molefe was holding in Eskom, and have questions as a minister or as an oversighting person. Why is he resigning? Is he resigning because of this? Then if he's resigning because of this, this is what Eskom should follow after the resignation of the CEO. Mr. Molefe again was sworn in Parliament, as everybody has said so. When you are sworn in Parliament, you take a permanent job for the 5 years of the sitting of Parliament. You take a permanent job in any organization. He was sworn in Parliament. We were with him on the Thursday. Then when we went out of Parliament on Friday morning, leaving the premises of Parliament, on radio, he is employed as a CEO, re-employed as CEO in the board. The processes that Eskom has taken, a chairperson of Eskom, the processes, are they legally? Are those processes legal? Are they documented that I, as a member of Parliament this time, because Brian Molefe did not leave Eskom to go and work in other organization, he came to Parliament. I, as a member of Parliament, therefore, Eskom is at liberty to employ me at any time. It is worse for a person who has resigned or has been retrenched or has been retired or has stepped down. It becomes worse. We just need an explanation. And this explanation, Minister, Deputy Minister, the board members. By the way, we called the minister, the ministry, and the board members, Honorable Singh, because we wanted the board members themselves, as Honorable Gordon has stated, all board members that are here must say something. That's why we have called this meeting. We wanted them to agree that we agreed as board members, in fact, to reinstate Brian Molefe. All of us, we took a decision and we agreed on that decision based on these things. And you give us the legal issues that made you to agree on those on the issue employing them, employing Brian Molefe. Minister, you said you are not employing. Therefore, you are not you might not be acknowledged. It's not a force. It's not a legal thing for you, a legal thing for Eskom to do to inform you in good time that we are going to take these steps, like employing the GCO of the board. Is that also on a legal document? Can we be given and look at them and see if this is a constitutional right or it is constitutionally right to happen? My last question would be, or concern, yes, it's a question. Minister, you supported the Commission of Inquiry. You made a statement recently that you support the Commission of Inquiry on Eskom and what is happening in the company. That alone to me, Minister, means that you knew that there is something wrong in the company. Therefore, the inquiry must carry on. Do you still, in this meeting, support the fact that there must be a commission of inquiry? The members of Parliament in this portfolio committee, once this commission of inquiry, all of them emphasized on the commission of inquiry. Therefore, that would be our recommendations also, that there must be a commission, a deep or a legal commission of inquiry with all what the members are expecting from that inquiry, with all the resources. All documents that are asked by the committee members, we would want them to be sent as soon as possible, because this does not end in this room. This does not end today. We are still going to pursue it as the portfolio committee. And also on Rule 167 of the National Assembly rules, we are given powers there to summon anyone to give evidence in front of the committee. Therefore, with all the rights that we have, we are expected to serve the people of the country. It is said in this committee, Minister, Deputy Minister, Chairperson of the board, the DDGs that you have in the entities that are here, the media people, we do not want anything, but we want the truth, so that we are able to face the communities around this issue. The members have said a lot about who they met and who they spoke to. I was also called and asked by a community member that it means we are being robbed by the same government, because I worked for 48 years as an SABC member, and I was a lieutenant. But the money I got was less than 2 million rands when I left the job. So for a man who works for 18 months and get a 30 million rand, what made them to give him 30 million rand? And also the issue of, in one of the documents of Eskom, there's an issue talking about 50 years and 60 years. When I looked at it, I want to know, do you work in Eskom for 18 months? If I work in Eskom for 18 months and I'm 59 years, when I get to 60 years, does that rule apply to me also? I just work for 1 year. Does that rule apply to me? Or does that rule apply to a person who has at least worked for 5 years or for 3 years in Eskom. Can we be explained in what is happening in that role? I think the legal people of Eskom, the legal people from Eskom will clarify that for us. And whoever has estimated or has come up with the decision of the 30 million rand can explain to us why was it 30 million in 18 months. Before I conclude, I just want us to know that we've got legal people from Parliament that I so wish before Dr. Ngubane speaks, the legal people give us give us something on the issue of sub judice and explain to us thoroughly the rule of sub judice as per the rules of National Assembly. How does it work in a committee situation? Thank you very much. Before the responses from the department, the Eskom board and the minister, can we get the legal opinion from the legal people of Parliament?
Thank you, Chairperson. The advice previously given to the committee is what I am going to reiterate again. Just briefly, just to understand what the sub judice rule is. Historically, this rule was created to protect the courts and juries from being influenced in the administration of justice. So it was to protect the administration of justice, especially in light of there being a jury system. But in South Africa, under the new dispensation with our constitution, there's a great move towards transparency and openness and the need for the public to know what's happening in the country. So in light of that and in light of our new constitutional dispensation, the courts have ruled on the issue of sub judice. And the Western Cape High Court, in the decision of Media Television, set very stringent rules with regard to the application of the sub judice rule. And just to understand, this was in relation to the publication and broadcasting of a criminal case. So even in an instance where there was issues related to a criminal case, the court felt that the right to know and the right for the free flow of information outweighed the need to have certain information kept under wraps. And the test that the court set was that there must be a real prejudice to the administration of justice. And even in such an instance, the curtailing of the free flow of information must outweigh the free flow of information. So the test is very stringent and such that we now have free reporting and broadcasting of even criminal trials. So how do we relate that to Parliament, and how does the sub judice rule apply to the National Assembly? If we start with, we know that the Constitution starts with saying there is a need for accountability, responsiveness, and openness. And if we start at the basics, what is the role of the National Assembly? The National Assembly is elected to represent the people and ensure there is oversight and scrutiny of executive action. And the Constitution gives the National Assembly specific powers to ensure that this role is met. And if we look specifically at Section 56, B of the Constitution, it says the National Assembly or any of its committees may require any person or institution to report to it. So that is the power of the National Assembly. When there's an issue under consideration, the National Assembly or its committees may call any person to report to it. So how does the sub judice rule fit into this power of the National Assembly? There's two, obviously the courts has its own powers to deal with matters under consideration, but this does not curtail the National Assembly and its committees from carrying out its oversight responsibilities. These are two competing interests, and there may be an overlap, but the National Assembly cannot stop its functioning because the matter is before court. However, given the fact that there is this issue of separation of powers, the National Assembly itself has created a rule to curtail itself, and that's Rule 89. And Rule 89 is very specific and very limited. It says no member may reflect on the merits of any matter in which judicial decisions in a court of law is pending. So firstly, the rule applies only to members. It's something for members to take into consideration, or that is applicable to them when they are asking questions. And that is mainly to respect the independence of the judiciary, to ensure that we don't make any negative comments about cases that may be pending, and also to respect the rights of litigants before the court. But that does not mean members cannot scrutinize and oversee executive action and any matter before them. They must just have due regard to this rule. Secondly, this rule does not apply to members of the public. It only applies to members of the Assembly. So when the members of the public or officials are asked to respond to questions, they are compelled to do so. That they're relying on the sub judice rule does not have merit, because the matter pending before court is not necessarily the same issues that this committee may ask for. The committee is exercising its oversight and accountability functions. And further, the committee does have specific powers when members of the public refuse to participate. Then they can be summoned to appear before the committee, and failure to cooperate in that instance can result in criminal charges being brought. So, Chairperson, that's briefly the sub judice rule and the powers of the committee. Thank you.
Well, that's off the table.
Thank you very much. So the matter is clear.
Yeah.
Could you please respond to the issues that the members have raised, Honourable Minister and Dr. Mbane and your team? Thank you very much. I'll give over to the Minister to respond to issues that have raised by members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. In fact, members have made lots of comments, and there are a number of questions that they've asked. And can you hear me? Am I mic'd still? I don't have a voice that you can carry. I used to be a good teacher before. What? I'm just going to go through the list of what I think are questions that people have asked. But I also think I want to later address myself to the fact that to the issue of a further investigation, and maybe just to ask the Chair, when you speak about the Commission of Inquiry, which Commission of Inquiry are you speaking about? So that I can respond.
No, Minister, I was speaking about the Commission of Inquiry you said you supported as the Minister.
Into state capture.
In the state capture.
Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Didler Tuliau summons me. The Honourable Member Mazzoni's question. The issue is that the top six often engages with its deployees, and I consider this a normal engagement in that kind of respect. What came out of that discussion was that we presented to the top six something similar that we presented to you today, and the top six had we had long discussion, and we were then sent back, the DM and I, and we were told that the government will have to sort it out. So the President, the Deputy President, myself had to sort it out. And we've established a committee to that effect that has a number of people in it. And really what it is to do is to look at the legal opinions of Eskom, the legal opinions of my department, to subject it to an independent legal opinion, and then to make a decision out of that. The reason why I did not, it's in terms of A, of my affidavit part A, that I've decided to, sorry, I'm just taking these things away, I can't get them now. That I've decided not to oppose. It was largely to do with the fact that I've actually been noted there as somebody who have made the appointment. Now, I've not made the appointment of Brian Molefe at all. In fact, and this will answer the questions later on as well, there's a memoranda of incorporation, and the court will have to address itself to that as well. Mr. Molefe, in terms of Eskom, was appointed in terms of the 2014 memorandum of incorporation. Chairperson, this also answers your question. He was, and in that memorandum of incorporation, it says that, if I'm looking at my affidavit, it says that in 2014, paragraph 14.3.4, no, the 2014 MOI did not require the minister to be noted as a party to the employment agreement of the group's chief executive. In the 2016, remember I was appointed in 2014, in 2016 we relooked the MOI, and paragraph 14.3.4 of the 2016 MOI requires the minister to be noted as a party to the contract of employment between the company and the group chief executive. Now, there was another question asked of me where it says the Honourable Member Mazzoni also asked for the details of the agreement of the 30 million. I think I passed that on to Eskom. In fact, I also passed on to Eskom where the issues around retrenchment, resignation, and so forth. In my affidavit, I state, now my affidavit is done under oath. So if I lie in my affidavit, then that's kind of the end of me as a public representative. But more importantly, it's probably the end of me as a person who I know. So, I say in my affidavit, I did not in any way act unreasonably when I learnt of the true facts, namely that Mr. Molefe had not resigned. Remember, the 11th of November, I actually, said, and I said it earlier, I think members didn't listen to me, but I said it earlier, that I said I was sad to see him go, but I wish him well with his resignation. So I did believe that there was a resignation. In fact, the first time when I saw the 30 million rand in the newspaper, that was the first time I knew about it. But that was because Eskom thought that they were acting in terms of the MOI of 2014. And between 2014's MOI, Molefe's employment and reinstatement, and the 2016 MOI, there's about 3 months difference. And that's the issue. Now the court will have to address itself to this matter. And I have agreed in my affidavit that whatever the court decides, I will agree with that. So that's the issue. The advert for the CEO, the board will talk to. Let me talk, Chairperson, to what the process of governance is in terms of my department. Now remember that my department was established initially as the Department of Privatization many, many years ago. So the department has 6 public enterprises within it. And the department, so much of what exists at the moment in the department exists because of historical relations too. So the department has a shareholder compact that is an agreement drawn between myself as minister and any one of the 6 state-owned companies. And that shareholder compact is measured annually. So annually, externally, by the Auditor General or the company that is the auditor for that state-owned company, they will be assessed. So sometimes they meet the targets 56%, sometimes they meet 90% of the targets, sometimes they meet 80% of the targets, and there are consequences for whether or not you meet the targets below 60%. So, and of course it's quite an intensive engagement. So the state-owned companies are governed, the relationship is governed in that way. Then there is the Companies Act, and we draw for each one of the state-owned companies a memorandum of incorporation. And the memorandum of incorporation also deals with issues like the appointment of CEs, the kind of operational things within the company. And it also deals with the materiality and significance and materiality document also deals with the various levels of decision making within whether I make the decision or whether the board makes the decision. So it's not something we do because we think, oh, this morning we wake up, how am I going to run the state-owned company? It is very carefully legislated and very carefully, there are real memoranda and legislation that governs this, including, except for the now, all the state-owned companies actually have their own legislation as well. So Eskom is governed by the Eskom Conversion Act of 2001. Can we improve these acts? Yes, we can. But what the process is now is to try and deal with these governance matters in relation to the state-owned company reform process, which the Deputy President chairs. Now, thus far, because there are governance issues and governance problems within the state-owned companies, there are other problems in the state-owned companies as well that we've got to deal with. And I'll speak about how I want to deal with the issue. I was going to do it in my budget speech, but I might as well do it now, with the issues in Eskom as well. But the idea is to have an overarching shareholder management bill. And now it's taken a long time for this thing to come about. But we are just at the point now where we've submitted to Cabinet and all the ministers are now responding to the shareholder management bill. And the idea there is to stop the fragmentation that we've had in state-owned companies over the last how many years. But also to standardize procedures, to ensure that we have it across all 22, at least the 22 big state-owned companies, and so forth. Having said that, the governance issues, state-owned companies can do much better, but I do think it does belie the fact that state-owned companies actually have been the hard metal of the backbone of the economy of our country, especially the two large ones, Transnet and Eskom. What did I do to ensure ongoing capacity? Is this my water? In Eskom, Honourable Member Luyenge, there's actually, there are 42,000 workers in Eskom. And I appointed, the board appointed Mr. Koko, and I supported that appointment. Mr. Koko, at this stage, as you've all mentioned in various ways today, has been asked to take leave while we complete the Cliff Decker investigation. And that's an investigation into all these Sunday Times newspapers. And that report is supposed to be due quite soon. But there is a leadership gap at Eskom at the moment. And I suppose in my reasoning, after Mr. Molefe left, that gap was very, very prominent. And you've seen in the last 7 to 8 months all the stuff that's been happening around Eskom. And so, whilst there are incredible technical skills, there are engineers, there are civil engineers, there are, they're just a number, nuclear physicists, there are just a number of highly skilled people in the company. But we don't have the requisite leadership in the company, and that's what I was worried. That's what I'm worried about in terms of the present where we are at the moment. Salaries, the two large state-owned companies, CEs, earn 7 and 8 million. The rest of them earn in line with the number of those employed, etc. So they earn almost half or less than half of what the others earn. Of course, in the SOC reform process, we've passed the remuneration of non-executive directors and executive directors that will feed into the overall SOC state-owned company reform, where the salaries will be better managed. Because there's a very strong feeling in Cabinet that that when you work for a state-owned company, because it's both commercial and developmental, you are expected to almost be conscious of not having salaries higher than most of us. I don't know if that means we're going to bring the salaries down, because these are large companies. Eskom has 42,000 workers. Transnet has 67,000 workers. They are large companies, and so we'll have to look at a proper median for the payment of CEs. Look, I just think it's too much. But I think I've got to subject myself to a legal process because it's governed by the labour law. It's governed by how they've been paid over a period of time and so forth. So, but I do hear the point quite starkly, and I think at some point we should be bringing the SOC reform process in terms of remuneration and board appointments to the portfolio committee. Eskom is very important to this country, and I agree with Honourable Member Mondle. It's important because it generates the electricity for the whole country. 95% of electricity is generated from Eskom. And there is a question mark. And the chair has raised this matter too, and many members have raised it. Brian Molefe will never be cleared until there's an investigation into the state capture report. And so, but he can't do that. He can't clear himself. That is something that we have to do. I heard Honourable Member Gordon saying today that, and many other members also called for an investigation. Now, I was going to report this in my budget speech, but I do want an investigation into procurement at Eskom. My department has already drawn up the terms of reference for it, and that's separate to whatever the Parliament decides. But we will have an investigation, and at some point I thought we should do it with the SIU, because we already have an agreement with the SIU, and they've done a number of investigations into Eskom already. But we want to do it, and it will have to deal with all 7 investigations into Eskom, all inconclusive investigations in the last 5 years. And so it has to bring all of those together, as well as do the investigations into the matters that are now before us. And look at, in specific, look at procurement at Eskom. Was there due diligence done around the 30 million rand? I think Eskom can respond to that. I'm very conscious of the Powers and Privileges Act, Honourable Member Shivambu. And therefore, whatever I'm saying in this room, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm a member of Parliament and I'm governed by the Powers and Privileges Act. I'm an Honourable Member CNAs, and thank you very much for kind words. But also, let me just say, did President Jacob Zuma instruct me? Now, as is normal, I actually went to tell him, when Eskom told me that they were going to appoint Brian Molefe as the CE, or reinstate him, I told Jacob Zuma that. I told the President it's the norm. I always do so. I went to the officials of the ANC and I also told them. And I met with all 6 of them, and so that's not it's not a thing that I wouldn't do. But did I get an instruction? Now, if you all look in my eyes, as you asked me that, no. I did not get an instruction to do so. I said earlier in my opening remarks that when I stopped the 30 million, and Honourable Member Gordon is maybe right, I should have allowed Brian to go and litigate, but I didn't do that at the time. Because the 4 options he put before us, or not he put before us, there were 4 options that, when I told Eskom that they must renegotiate, the 4 options they put before me, that is an alternate, I said go and get an alternate pension proposal. It was not possible because it has to will change the pension fund rules. The settlement payment and I was not happy with the settlement payment for probably exact reason members around the table are not happy with the settlement payment, because that would then be a golden handshake. Then the third one is that he resigns with a settlement. And if he doesn't agree, then we go to court. And the last one is rescind based on the fact that I didn't want them to pay out the 30 million rand, and Molefe remains CEO of Eskom. And those are the proposals that were put before me. And the proposals put before me, they also said, the board said that they've made a decision, and I mean, I'm sure you're going to ask the board members, that they prefer the option of rescinding, or they've taken the option to rescind based on my request, and Brian remains the CEO of Eskom. Now, the first time I spoke about it into the public space was at a press conference I held probably a week ago. And at that press conference, I said that based on the legality of it, that's what I will do. I will support the Brian Molefe coming back as CEO. But I said very distinctly based on whether or not it is legal. The other issue that I need to raise is the fact that, based on whether it's legal, the board also assured me, and I had no reason to doubt, and I put that in my affidavit as well. I had no reason to doubt that the board, I believed on the strength of the legal advice received by Eskom and communicated to me, and which I had no reason to doubt, that once the contract of early retirement has been mutually rescinded on the basis of an error, it would inevitably mean that the status quo would have to be restored. And that I make in my affidavit. Should we have a retired judge?
Let us listen and ask questions thereafter. Let us know.